it won't be so much fun for people to try and give feedback, because they would feel that you already made your mind, you already know what you wanted to build, and they aren't going to really change what you're going to build. But when you say, hey, this is just the beginning, this is barely working, we just want the feedback to understand what to build better, then they can say, oh, I can really have effect on this project. I can really shift it towards my needs. They provide tons of use cases and experiences that we can build on top. So basically, the idea was to trigger that, and we did it successfully. My name is Aviram Hassan. I am CEO and co-founder at Medalware, where we build MirrorD.
This is Code Story, a podcast bringing you interviews with tech visionaries.
Like 6 months moonlighting.
There's nothing on the backend.
Who share what it takes to change an industry.
I don't exactly know what to do
took
next.
many goes to get right.
Who build the teams that have their back.
The company is its people.
The teams help each other achieve. I was proud of our team.
Keeping scalability top of mind.
All that infrastructure was
Yes, we've been fighting it as we grow.
Total waste of time.
The stories you don't read in the headlines.
It's not an easy thing to achieve, mind
Took it off the shelf and dusted it off and tried it again.
To ride the ups and downs of the startup life.
You need to really want it. Not just about technology.
All this and more on Code Story. I'm your host, Noah Lappart, and today how Aviram Hassan created a company that created a product to make cloud development local and faster. This episode is supported by Terso. Terso is the open-source edge database from the creators of libSQL. Do you put your edge computing close to your users? You should put your data there too. Terso makes this easy utilizing the developer experience of SQLite. Access a free starter plan at terso.tech/codestory. Terso, welcome to the data edge. This episode is brought to you by our friends at MemberStack. MemberStack is the fastest way for you to launch a beautiful Webflow MVP with robust authentication and smooth payments integration. Join companies like Slack and American Airlines in serving millions of members every single day. Get started for free by visiting memberstack.com/codestory. Aviram Hassan started hacking his way into stuff at a young age, primarily from online multiplayer games. The first game was a fan-based game for Pokemon when he was 8 years old, which was helpful for him to learn English. He served in the Israeli military prior to becoming a startup solution architect and backend developer. Outside of tech, he's a family man with a 6-month-old, born around the same time as his startup. He also really enjoys coffee, but he admits he's not obsessive or overly enthusiastic about it. Given their background, Aviram and his co-founder wanted to build a product-based company. In their last company, they didn't really have a developer environment, as it was hard to maintain and didn't represent real data in the production environment. They started thinking about how they could solve this sort of problem. This is the creation story of Medalware and MirrorD.
Me and Eyal, we both wanted to build a product that people use. We both came from more experience in the backend area and also in companies that sell more so services and not really product oriented. We wanted to do something that people use, and we knew that we are not going to do very well in C world because that wouldn't really leverage our background. So we started thinking about what we could do that can be a product company and also speak to our strengths. So one of the challenges we had at our last company and we faced together was actually, we had a long iteration time between when you change one line of code until you actually saw how it affected the whole system. So imagine you get a small ticket, just change an effect in one UI, but the event for the UI gets from one microservice, goes to another, and then it gets processed from Kafka, and then it is pulled into a database, and then you have another backend and a front end serving that database. You need tons of microservices and tons of different data to see how it behaves in the real world. And in our last company, we didn't really have any developer environments because it was hard to maintain and really have a developer environment that meant anything. You could set up the stack quite easily, but then to bring real data would be real problem because we had many different customers with many different features, and we just wanted to see the effect on, let's say, the average environment. what happened is that the time you got to see how it affects the whole system was when you deployed it to the staging environment. And in order to deploy to the staging environment, you didn't want to deploy broken versions, so you had to go through CI/CD, and part of the CI/CD is also code review. So you do the change, you run a test, you get peer-reviewed, what we call code review, and then it gets merged to the main branch, and then someone cuts off a release, or every PR is a release. But in our case, it was we cut versions, and then the version goes to staging, so testing, staging, then production. And only in staging you could really see the effect of your new change. So you either went like blindly or add a lot of mocks and tests, but in many cases you would have to have some more iterations against the staging environment, because there you faced a lot of situations where you didn't anticipate. Then you had a lot of slowness, and then also the staging environment was shared. I'm going into it because I think both me and Aviram, and also the team, was very traumatized by the process. First world problem. It's not real trauma, but it was really the most painful point we had. And from there, we started thinking about how we see the solution to these kind of problems.
Let's dive into the MVP then. Tell me about that first product you built. How long did it take to build? And what sort of tools did you use to bring it to life?
Okay, so I would say we had two MVPs. One was the real traction MVP, like the equivalent of a landing page for a developer product. And the second one was a real MVP that really solved the problem for developers. So the first MVP took 1 month, and the real MVP took about, I would say, 6-7 months of team working on it, like 6 people working on it. The first MVP was more like to show that we can gain traction and we can go on build this company and product from bottom up with the open source approach. And like if you look at, let's say, the standard startups, at least in Israel, where it's mostly common to do B2B, we wanted to show that we can do it bottom up and go with the open source. When you do top down, usually to get the first investment, you get design partners, and then you show some kind of letter of intent, or just get them interviewed with potential VCs, and then they show that they explain why they would love to use your product when it will be available. And then usually that's enough to get the first round of investment. But when you do bottom up and open source, we believe that you need to show traction and the ability to really bring users into the product without them being your friends, and showing that like you can really pull it off. So the only way to do that is by showing the traction. And the MVP was basically to give some idea of what we want to build, but have one feature of a real product and show it to the world and see how they respond to it, to the messaging, to what we say. So we spent, I would say, like around 2 weeks mostly on coding, and other 2 weeks just on messaging, marketing, documentation, and just like making sure that people understand what we want to build. And that's like a work in progress, and we want them to stay tuned. So basically, I would call it a landing page for the real product. So that got off and got very good traction, like compared to being a tool that isn't really useful to anyone. It got well received also in different message bulletins, Reddit, Action News, etc. And that also led to our first round of investment. And based on that investment money, we wanted to build a real MVP.
In building any MVP, you have to make certain decisions and trade-offs, and you're kind of talking at them at a high level, but I want to hear a little more in depth about those decisions and trade-offs you had to make in, feature cut, tech debt, things like that, and how you coped with those decisions.
The idea was to have enough code and functionality to make people try to use or like consider using it and discuss it. So we didn't want to work on all the use cases, or even our real use case that we wanted to solve wouldn't be solved with our tool. And the idea was to build something as lean as possible, like a skeleton of a bicycle, and say to people, hey, this will be a bicycle. Would you love to be it when the skeleton evolves into the bicycle? The idea was to build anticipation and not to be really something that solves anything, and also being very rough brings a lot of feedback, like good feedback. So if you build a very, let's say, whole solution, it won't be so much fun for people to try and give feedback, because they would feel that you already made your mind, you already know what you wanted to build, and they aren't going to really change what you're going to build. But when you say, hey, this is just the beginning, this is barely working, we just want the first feedback to understand what to build better, then they can say, oh, I can really have effect on this project. I can really shift it towards my needs and what I want to have. And then they're more engaged. They provide tons of use cases and experiences that we can build on top. So basically, the idea was to trigger that, and we did it successfully. Like, we got a lot of feedback from different people, and they said, yeah, so this is going to be like this. And we said, yeah, exactly. And then they just wrote us user stories that we wanted to have. But of course, it's better to get an external validation. I would say someone from another country that doesn't really know us, doesn't care about us, but is really into the product and wants it to be the best it can be for them. And that kind of feedback was really helpful to know how to prioritize the next MVP.
This episode is encrypted by CipherStash. Data breaches are becoming a fact of life. Know why? One of the reasons is because developers lack the right tooling to get the job done, i.e. encryption at rest tools are complex and inadequate. The solution? Encryption in use with CipherStash. CipherStash uses searchable encryption in use technology, providing continuous and universal protection for sensitive data. With CipherStash, you can turn your existing database into a vault, utilizing zero trust key management, SQL native, and with no code. Though encryption is complicated, CipherStash is easy to use. The tool fully supports SQL via a drop-in driver replacement, supporting the query types you know and love today. And did we mention it's fast? For queries over 100 million records, you can expect additional overhead of less than 1 millisecond. It's a no-brainer. Get started by reviewing their docs or downloading sample projects in Rails or Node plus Sequelize today. Visit cypherstash.com/codestory and get started protecting your data. This episode is supported by Treble. This day and age, APIs are a fact of life. And as such, product and engineering teams need tooling that is lightweight, real-time, and data-rich to help them ship and maintain APIs faster. That's where Treble comes in. Treble is an all-in-one platform for the entire API lifecycle. The product offers world-class monitoring and observability, providing more than 40 data points for each request, enabling you to understand everything from performance to user behavior. Dashboards help connecting your entire team for lifecycle collaboration. Documentation is automatically generated, saving massive amounts of time for your development team with every new release. And setting up Treble? Super easy and fast. In 3 simple steps, you can be up and running with their platform. Their pricing is designed to support API teams of all sizes. So get started with Treble today and automate your API ops. Did I mention they have a free forever plan? Find out more by visiting treble.com/codestory. That's TRBLLE.com/codestory. So from that point, you've got your MVP, and I hear you saying you built another one. And in doing so, you probably had to create some sort of roadmap to build that next MVP or to get that MVP done and then progress it from there. I'm curious about that MVP, that process, and also how you go about deciding this is the next most important thing to build for MirrorD.
Once we saw the initial traction and we got users to provide feedback and ideas to what exactly they wanted to be, it made it a lot easier. Like, we knew the first features we would have. We weren't sure how they would look like, because at least from the very basic solution, like the basic functionality it provides, it's very easy to understand what we need to add. So MirrorD lets you run a local code in the context of the remote environment, and it doesn't do any mounts, it doesn't use VPN, it's just on the process level. And we do a lot of low-level hacking to do that. And not really hacking, but like hacking in terms of doing stuff that usually people don't do. We don't want to build an operating system as day one, so we just need to choose which parts we need to implement, and then to understand what parts exactly we need to build, we try to make as lean as possible user stories. For example, I want to run a Python Flask server that receives traffic on specific port and is able to connect to a remote port in the cluster. So then we know that we need to support this use case, and then we test that specific use case to see exactly what we need to implement for that. And that was like the basic milestones. And that's how we really spread and split the very big and ambitious solution into very small parts. And each time we added more support, for example, for, as I said, Python class, we just released that, and maybe we didn't support Go with a specific framework, or we didn't support another language and framework for some reason. At least we could see that it worked for that use case, and also build on top of that validation and go ahead and reach more users, see more use cases, and build for them.
Okay, let's switch to team then. So how did you go about building your team? And what did you look for in those people to indicate that they were the winning horses to join you?
Since we are an open source company with open source project, we decided that the company needs to be remote first. And also we said, okay, if we're remote first and we're open source, let's make it global. And the idea with making it global is that you're able to reach many communities, many different countries around the world, and make the project and the product more inclusive for all people. And also you get a lot of time zone coverage in terms of support, or in terms of community. So anyone coming into our Discord channel can have someone talking to them from the team without anyone doing overtime or working outside of the work hours. And once we decided that's the way to go, we said, okay, where's the best place to gather engineers from around the world? And Immunity is written like 99% in Rust. Like when it's not Rust, it's because we can't do it in Rust. We knew that the Rust community is quite amazing. I was part of the Reddit community and many different Discord channels. So I saw that there's like people looking for Rust jobs and they can't find any. Like it's dominated by cryptocurrencies or security, and like usually it's not product oriented, I would say. And still, like even when there are companies, it's not the most appealing ones, or they're not global. And so there was a lot of engineers looking to shift and work on Rust. We basically answered anyone that messaged us, even if it was too many and it was like they didn't match. Like we had like a policy where we said there's no one, won't ignore anyone, even if they don't pass even on the CV level. What we primarily looked for is open source experience, because we want people who know how to work in an open source community, in an online world, and they're able to communicate well in a written manner. They're self-learning. Like that's one of the most important things we need at Metalbear. You work across different time zones. You don't always have anyone helping you. So you need to be able to manage yourself, to work your own hours, to make sure that you don't get stuck on stuff for unneeded reason, and also to be able to communicate what's going on without going on a daily meeting. We don't have meetings. We have only circle meetings. Everything else is asynchronous, like Discord or GitHub or Notion. Primarily what we look for is the ability to evolve and work efficiently alone in an online team, like asynchronous online team that you can rely on.
This episode is supported by Terso. Terso is the open source edge database from the creators of libSQL, the popular fork of SQLite. If you put your edge computing close to your users, like with Netlify or Vercel edge functions or Cloudflare workers, you should put your data there too, in order to maximize performance gains at the edge. Terso makes it easy. With a developer experience of SQLite and a distributed database you can replicate much closer to your users than traditional database offerings in the cloud. Terso's lightweight, easy to use, and free to get started. The team at Terso is offering a generous starter plan specifically for Code Story listeners. Head over to terso.tech/codestory and get started today. That's TURSO.tech/codestory. Terso, welcome to the Data Edge. This episode was automatically optimized by Cast. If you run cloud-native software on AWS, Google Cloud, or Azure, you know how out of hand the bill can get. This uncertainty hurts your business, but you can solve it with Cast AI. Cast AI automates cloud cost, performance, and security management for hundreds of companies of all sizes. The platform's customers begin saving immediately and cut an average of over 60%. So before you go and sign a multi-year contract with a cloud provider or lay people off, check out what Cast AI can do for you. To get you saving even faster, Cast AI is offering a free cloud cost audit with a personal consultation. Visit cast.ai/codestory to get started. Let's talk about scalability. Did you build this to scale efficiently from day one, or were you fighting this as you grew and gained traction? I suppose from MVP 1, MVP 2, there was probably some changes there, and then as you progress the product, tell me about that progression.
We have the luxury that it doesn't have any scale problems because you run it on your own environment. So we don't have any constraints on that. We don't need to serve many users at the same time. We're not a classic SaaS in that manner. We did need to improve on terms of being able to answer all the people and manage the community, and in terms of the team to be able to manage it efficiently, because it's not so common to have remote first, global, different cultures, different countries, startups. So we also needed to understand how to do it. And still, it's not in such a big scale, but I assume that would be the next problem. But when we did anything that needed to scale, like some of the backend services we have for telemetry, licensing, and such, was always like the most basic solution, and then see how people react to that, and see first, of course, that they use it. And if they use it and like it, then we implement the more advanced use cases, the more advanced scale, to support their needs. The idea is always to build as minimal as possible. Because when you go like bottom up and you work with like, let's say, the online world, and you can't really know what people would want, so you have to make a lot of guesses, and you have to always validate yourself, and you can't really take time to ship around 1 month of solution when it might be useless. So you have always to get more external validation, so you always need to build very efficiently and just what's needed to make sure that you want to invest more in that path.
Well, as you step out on the balcony and look across all that you've built, what are you most proud of?
The first thing is the team. Like, I really love our team. It's very diverse. Like, we got people from Germany, Brazil, Canada. People are really different. It's like a team of superpowers. Like, I can see each one of the team having their own more focus area, more experience, more skills. Like, very diverse in that term. So we have some people who are more efficient on delivering code, and more other people that are more efficient, like not efficient, but good at maintaining the code and keeping it in high quality. And you have people more product oriented, like what the customer is gonna feel, what's the user gonna feel. They really complement each other. So I think in terms of that, the team here, I'm really proud of the team we have, and how well they work together, and the good things we have to each other, and the real fun we have together. I think, at least from my perspective, you can see that many of them have great work-life balance. We can work when we want and take breaks when we when we want to. And I think that makes it a lot more efficient, because you don't have like the work time that you have to work in. So if you're not efficient at work right now, you can just go to the beach, drink some beer, come back, and work when you're efficient. Don't work when you're not efficient. Manage your time. We trust you. And of course, when things are urgent, we let them know, and then we expect them to be more available and respond faster and not take their time. But like the average day, the average work is more balanced and very respectful of their time. So I'm not sure if it's one or two, but like in terms of team and work-life balance, I'm really proud of that.
Okay, let's flip the script a little bit. Tell me about a mistake you made and how you and your team responded to it.
So early on, we had an idea of the first product. We look at MirrorD as a project, and you have a product. MirrorD is basically a project you can use. It's an open source, but it's not a product we offer. We're not going to monetize by people using MirrorD directly. We had an idea of what to monetize and commercialize, and that idea got thrown into the bin. But we worked on it for about, I would say, 3 months, maybe less, and it was very intensive work. And we thought that would be the smart move of the first phase of monetization. And then, luckily, the idea was, when we look at a bottom-up company, you start with the open source, and then we want to convert you into a paying user. You can look at the possible funnel from two ways. So open source, then paying. But what kind of paying customer are you? Are you a company, or are you an individual? And we thought that it would be easier to convert open source users to individual customers. So we started building a solution for individuals. it wasn't the same use case as Mirror D. It was like something that really relates to the same audience and would make sense to use with Mirror D. And we thought it would be easier than to sell to companies at our stage. And when we released, and we did it in parallel to working on the Mirror D MVP. And then when we released the Mirror D MVP, we just got many companies reaching out and saying, hey, we want the paid version of it. And we were saying, well, we're working on versions for individuals, not for companies. And of course, we said, okay, if we see this kind of fraction, it's way better to just convert open source users and teams to customer teams and companies in terms of validation, in terms of revenue and ability to make it scalable. Because making a scalable B2C, and as you said, that's maybe it's a good answer to your scale question. Making a B2C company is very hard in terms of scale. Like even if you have only 1,000 users, you have to support their use cases and you have to have a very efficient way of helping them. Because if you have 1,000 paying users and each one is an individual and they have issues, that's a lot of problems to handle. You need a very efficient way to tackle it. But if you have tens of paying customers and each one is a company, it's way easier to build that and do it more efficiently when you're small. So we decided to, let's say, pivot into converting companies first. Right now, I see it a mistake that we focused on the individuals because we really try to think what's better, to focus on the individual or companies. And we made the wrong decision, and then we changed it very fast once we realized that.
So what does the future look like for the product and for your team?
So the future looks like rolling more globally, having more regions, let's say, unlocked, having more people in different regions. And in terms of product, we want to make lots of more people use Mirror D, the open source project, and lots of more companies using Mirror D for teams, which is the commercial offering for companies. We want to make the Mirror D for teams a self-serve experience, so people can go in, buy a license without going through us as it's done right now. Later on, start building other open source projects and also commercialize those. So we see ourselves as a company that builds products and software for backend engineers, and Mirror D is just a start. We want to be able to be the company that resonates with backend engineers, and each time they have a need or they don't like their daily experience when they develop software, they can reach out to us and use one of the existing tools, or let us know and we'll try to figure out how to enhance their productivity. But right now, of course, our focus is Mirror D.
Okay, last question. So you're getting on a plane and you're sitting next to a young entrepreneur who's built the next big thing. They're jazzed about it. They can't wait to show it off to the world. Can't wait to show it off to you right there on the plane. What advice do you give that person, having gone down this road a bit?
Don't listen to anyone. I'm joking. But listen to everyone, take advice from everyone, but don't do what they say. That's I think what I see others doing, and I think we don't do it. And I think that's been the benefit for us. And every time we try to follow an advice exactly as people taught us, it was the wrong decision, because no one has the best context as you. As you, I mean the entrepreneur. And each one has their own state and understanding of what's going on. And no matter how good you explain your state and your situation, they probably lack 2 bits that missing to understand the better decision you can make. So you have to listen to everyone. You need to get advice. You need to get as much more perspective as you can. So, of course, network, talk, ask, don't be shy. But when it comes to taking a decision, never do something because someone told you to do so.
That's fantastic advice. Well, Aviram, thank you for being on the show today, and thank you for telling the creation story, not only of Metal Bear, but of Mirror D.
Thank you for the time, and thank you for the show. Really like it.
And this concludes another chapter of Code Story. Code Story is hosted and produced by Noah Labhart. Be sure to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or the podcasting app of your choice. And when you get a chance, leave us a review. Both things help us out tremendously. And thanks again for listening.
Taxes was feeling so stuck. Sitting in traffic, squeezing into a parking spot, all to squeeze in getting tax help during your lunch break. Now Taxes is a TurboTax expert who does your taxes for you, while you go about your day getting real-time notifications about their progress and the most money back guaranteed. Now this is Taxes. Intuit TurboTax. Get an expert now on TurboTax.com. Only available with TurboTax Live Full Service, real-time updates only in iOS mobile apps. See guarantee details at turbotax.com/guarantees.